Welcome to the Modern Titus to Women Unplugged podcast, where we dive fearlessly into the untold stories and struggles of women's lives. This is a space of authenticity where no topic is off limits. Each episode is a journey of discovery and empowerment, confronting challenges with honesty and vulnerability. From maintaining a home to healing from abuse, balancing motherhood with personal passions, and navigating single parenting, widowhood, divorce, and post-abortion heartbreak, we explore it all. With special guests offering wisdom and perspective, we uncover forgiveness and reignite love in marriage. Join us for soul-stirring conversations. Tune in. Your story matters. Welcome to the Modern Titus to Women Unplugged podcast, where we fearlessly dive into the untold stories and unspoken struggles that shape the lives of women today. Our guest today is Kissondra. Am I pronouncing your name right?
Yes.
Kissonda Williams. On this episode, we look at her journey and challenges of escaping from an abusive relationship, as she shares the insights and lessons gathered from this remarkable journey of self-reinvention, personal growth, and empowerment. So welcome. I'm so happy that you could be here with us. I know that this is going to be a very important episode because, you know, especially in the church environment, women are afraid. They feel ashamed when anything is happening to them. They don't talk about it. And they stay there and they suffer, you know. So, as I said before, this forum is one where we speak about things. We speak about the white elephant in the room. How about that? That's
Right.
what we do here.
Got you.
So, without further ado, I am going to, just ask some questions. Like, I'm interested to find out how you and your significant other met. I like to ask that question because I like to see how things were before and then how things, precipitated to, the situation that you had to leave. So if you mind sharing that with us, that'd be great.
Sure, no problem. First and foremost, Lorna, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I hope that this story is able to at least reach one person to give them the confidence that they need to move forward. My once significant other and I, we met, ironically, I was on my way to a friend's wedding. I was in her wedding as a bridesmaid. And so I had done all of my last minute things that morning, and I stopped to grab lunch before I took the train out to her house. And so he and I met at the restaurant since there was nowhere else for him to sit. So we sat together.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. So you guys just met like that?
Mm-hmm. Just organically.
Two ships passing. Yeah.
Literally.
That's nice.
Literally.
That's a beautiful story. Okay. So, after that, explain what happened. I mean, how did it move from, we met, we had a good time, I want to spend my life with you sort of thing, till, you had children and all of that. What happened? What happened? In your own words, tell us what happened.
I think over time, right, everybody grows. And sometimes you're growing together and sometimes you're growing apart. And in our case, I think we grew apart, to be perfectly honest. But, like you said, we have children. And so for at least the sake of that, it was like, okay, let's try to make this work. But I was progressing a lot in my career. I've been an educator for 20 years. So I was moving up in terms of earning my degrees and the responsibilities that I had at work and things like that. And then, of course, we have 3 children. So with each one comes the greater responsibility of just knowing how to juggle all of our lives together and those things. And for whatever reasons, he was separating from that. Um, and so with each child, it seemed a little bit different. And at first, you tend to think that some of these things are in your head, right? That it's not really happening.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just you. But over time, comments are being made. And it's evident that there's like some
Mhm.
jealousy there.
Mhm.
Like I said, I gotten my second master's degree within the relationship. He graduated with his high school diploma at highest, and that was not an issue for me. But subsequently became an issue to him. And so for all of the things I think that he was so proud of, like I graduated from Howard University, HBCU, tops of my class, all of these things. He was really proud
Mhm.
of that, and would spout it more than I would. But at the same time, sometimes those things became the daggers that were thrown back at me, and
Mm.
so and then over time, I realized as well that I was living, and I would have this conversation with him, that I was living in the shadows of his past relationships. And so, I'm like, well, the other person may have done these things to you or may have wronged you in whatever
Mhm.
way, but they're not things that I've done. I'm not saying that I'm perfect by any means, but if you're going to be upset with me, then be upset with me over something that I said or did. Not something that happened. And,
Mhm.
and there's a 17-year age difference between us. He's 17 years my senior. So,
Okay.
I would be
Mhm.
like, it can't be about things that had nothing to do with me, or in some cases, I may not have even been born yet. So,
Mhm.
realizing
Mhm.
that there were some things there from prior relationships, and we all come into relationships with whatever preceded the one that you're in.
Baggage or
But
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
everybody has it, but it was more
Everybody.
than I was willing to continue to live with. And we had already been together for 16 years. And like I said, during the last
Mhm.
parts of that, it was a lot of, for the sake of the kids, for the sake of the kids. And for the sake of
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
kids, I had to let it go, and myself.
So. Mhm. So, did you at any point encourage him to go back to school? Did you say, you know, babe, you know, why don't you do something in your field and, get your certification in whatever field he was in, or, did you encourage him, or did you just do your thing and leave him by the wayside?
And I was encouraging, and to some extent, when we first met, I didn't even have to. It was like there were so many things that he was interested in doing. He's a truck driver by trade, but
Mhm.
when we met, he was looking into like some other fields and what have you. And I was always very supportive of it. There was one where he
Mhm.
had gone back to school. He had gotten some certifications and things like that because he was pretty good with his hands and doing some work,
Mhm.
and repairing homes and things like that. So, I was
Okay.
very encouraging and supportive of that. And even with that, I was a math teacher most of my years in education. And so he was looking at this one position, for example, and he wasn't always so secure with what he felt maybe his basic math skills were, even though I thought he was really good. Um, and so I was like, okay, yeah.
Mhm.
He asked me, can you help me with this? I would bring home books from my job and, extra books and stuff that we had that I
Mhm.
knew I could use to
Mhm.
help support him. And it would go at some
Mhm.
points from like, oh, this is really cool, this is really helpful, and then it would be, well,
Right.
this isn't, you can't tell me what to do, and you think you know it all, and I'm like, no, I don't. It's just that this is what I do every day. um So I'm just giving you my recommendations and ways that I think would be, helpful for you to learn. So if somebody's resisting, like, I'm not going to force myself down your throat.
Right,
But,
I agree. Yeah.
like you said, it wasn't just like, I'm doing my thing, you do your thing. I was being as supportive as I could, without like turning it into something else.
Could could it be a case where he saw you as a younger woman to him? Could it be a case where he thought, oh, you're making all this progress, you're progressing, and I'm here and you're there. At some point, you're going to see somebody at your level and leave. Do you
I
think that
think
was the thought process?
I think there was some of that there, even though I never indicated that for myself. And when I would think it, I would try to be reassuring, like, if I didn't want to be here, I wouldn't be here. It's not me. I'm not stepping
Absolutely.
out. I'm not, doing any of these things. But I was accused of it a lot, of stepping outside of the relationship. And then when things would get really heated, his first go-to would be, well, the kids aren't mine, and all of these types of things.
Really?
Yeah.
That
Mm-hmm.
to that level? Oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh.
Mm-hmm. That was typically the first
Wow.
go-to. They're not mine.
Whew.
And then it would be, well, I'm going to leave and you can see what it's going to be like, to do everything by yourself, to handle everything by yourself. And I'm like, well, you can leave, but that doesn't hurt me in as much as it hurts them. Because the one thing that I
Yeah.
recall my parents and my grandmother, who was an intricate part of my life and growing up, made very clear to me before I left home at 17 was that I was already raised. So I didn't need to go out in the world and find somebody else to raise me. Um, and so, your leaving doesn't take
Right.
anything from me as a person. Yeah, it'll hurt and I'll adjust, but the people who are really going to suffer behind that are our kids, because you're their father,
Mhm.
not mine. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think there was a lot of that.
Okay. So when did the first act of abuse actually start? When, I mean, I know some of it was physical based on what you say, mental
Hmm.
abuse,
Hmm.
but when did it become a physical thing? At what point?
Um, it's funny. When our son, he's now 12.
Mhm.
He was not even one yet, I think. Um, and there was, I don't even remember why or how, but there was some altercation between us. Um, and I remember being in the bedroom and that he was choking me. And I remember contacting the police and things like that. And it's funny because I honestly had not remembered that until I moved away and I was going through some of the papers that I brought with me, and I still had the police report in it. And I was looking for something totally different, but started reading through the paperwork and saw that I still had that police report. And to be honest, when I read the police report, that's what brought that back to my memory. I had blocked it out. I had forgotten about it. But so yeah, that was, 12 years ago.
So were your family, your friends and family members, did anybody know what you were going through? Were they aware of, you know, the
I think
situation with the abuse and the all of that stuff there? Did you speak to anybody about it?
I never directly, particularly with my family, I never directly said much about it. Um,
Mhm.
until there was another incident with my daughter being young and him yelling, and
Mhm.
long story short, he ended up punching me in my face. And
Oh wow.
um And I ended up like I was fighting back. And so he left out with a knot upside the head and all this type of stuff. And I had to get my locks changed. And so my brother kind of sent me some money or whatever to help me get that done. And I had told my mom, and but we were all in different states. And at the end of the day, I mean, I don't think they said it to me at that time, but it had to be,
Right.
ultimately my decision to leave and to want to leave. And so that was like the second kind of like big altercation between us. But like you said, it wasn't all physical or always physical. There's a lot that's verbal. There's a lot, of course, then that becomes emotional. And then there's, which I had never really heard of till I started in therapy or what have you, like financial abuse. I never considered what that was or whatever. But being the one who was always supporting the family, I was never going to allow myself or my kids to be without. And so, if I had to do it, so be it. But there was a time where, over time, I didn't realize up to a point that I was kind of like carrying the heavy load of it. And to be perfectly honest, he's the one who pointed it out to me. Because it would be like, well,
Okay, that's interesting.
I would do more if I had more, or he would say things like, if we ever, if we were, we get married and then we had to get divorced, I'm going to file for spousal support because you're the one who makes more. And he would try to say it as like this off joke, but in my spirit, it never felt like a joke. And so so honestly, like I wasn't thinking of it in terms of like, I make this much, you make that much, therefore I should do this percentage of things. And all I knew was if things had to be done, it needed to get done. We needed to have a roof over our head and food on the table. And so I just did it. And maybe, I shouldn't have done it that way, but I did. And I never asked for anything in return or what have you. But I guess for him, he felt like I should have been, and was just kind of like waiting for the hammer to drop on the day when I would just like, okay, so when you gonna start doing this, this, and this? And so he kind of jumped the gun on that. And so sometimes I would help him with things and then he would be sure like, okay, I'm going to make sure I'm paying you back. And I'm like, okay, but it wasn't because I was like nagging about it or whatever. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make sure I give you back. I make sure I pay you back. So, it was like those types of things. But I'm like, but when I really did start paying attention to it, I was like, I realized that for the things that you want, the things that impact your life, you find a way to get it. But then when it comes to the things that that I will take care of, like it's just left to me to do it. And it was a lot. I was handling the rent. I handled all the utilities. I handled tuition for kids. I handled school clothes. I handled groceries. And it was like, okay, well, step in at any moment here. So when sometimes as I like really came to that realization, when he would go through these holes, well, I'm leaving and I'll let you see how it feels. And what I would be like, okay, honestly, it would be no different. It would just feel more peaceful because you're not here.
Well, I'm going to ask a question that I know the listeners might be wondering. You're educated, you're a very attractive woman. You clearly can stand on your own feet. Why did you stay? Why stay in that relationship?
A number of reasons. And trust me, I have asked myself that question. And why I've sought therapy, and in it now. I think there was a part of me that didn't want to admit failure. It was the first relationship that I had ever really had. Um, and then again, because we had the kids, I didn't want them to be in a home where they weren't being with their dad. Um, and just, you know, the I guess the white picket fence thinking around that. It should be a two-family home, and especially being an educator and seeing so many kids who are raised by single parents, and hearing some of the conversations that they would have around that, that they probably never said at home. But I didn't want my kids to have to, face feeling the way some of my students felt. Um, and then I had to realize, but if you're in a home where you're constantly arguing, you're bickering over everything, it's verbal fights, you're calling the police, you're going to domestic violence cases and all this type of stuff. You have, child protective services is called against you because of it. What's the difference? How is that making it any better, for them or for myself? Um, and so, yeah, I think I stayed because, like I said, it was my first real relationship. And, I was like, okay, I can make this work, so yeah. And then I think too, there was also a part of me that felt like, I don't know, maybe if I let this go, I may not ever find somebody else. So, I'm going to deal with the devil that I know instead of having to start over. Or potentially thinking that I'm starting over in terms of relationship with someone else and it not coming to fruition. And over time, 16 years, you just settle. You start settling in, and not necessarily settling for the person, but you start settling into the relationship, and you just know that day to day. And so, like I said, you dance with the devil that you know.
Then the children are seeing the police come in there. They're probably hearing your screams. They're hearing them saying things to you and all of that. What impact, how did you see any change in the children towards him or, towards you or to the relationship that you both have? Was there any
While we were still there,
that you care to
no.
share? You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
share if you don't
Oh, no,
want
no,
to
no, no,
share.
no.
Okay.
It's fine, just in general.
Mm-hmm.
While we were
Mm-hmm.
there, I didn't notice anything any different. Like you said, in the moment, of course they're scared. But now since we left, um, we have resumed an open relationship with their dad. So that they're able to speak to him whenever they'd like. But there is now starting to settle into a little bit of difference. And like I said, I don't speak against him um, in their presence or anything like that, or even out of their presence.
Right.
If I,
Mm-hmm.
it's not necessary, because at the end of the day, he's still their dad, and they didn't make that decision.
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
they, but I don't try to force things on them either, even in talking about situations and what have you. If they want to talk to me about it, they
Mm-hmm.
can. Sometimes they'll say, I don't feel like talking about it, I don't want to talk about it right now, and I don't press the issue in that moment. But so sometimes now they'll, I'm like, do you want to speak to your dad? We'll
Mm-hmm.
call them in the morning on their way to school, we'll
So,
call them at night before they go to bed, and sometimes
what
they're like, yeah,
what
and
happened
sometimes they're like,
that
not
made
today.
you feel that I have to leave? This is the day. This is what happened to make you make that decision that I have to leave. This is the breaking point. I have to leave. I have to make my getaway. What happened that changed from you just going along with the situation to I have to leave. I have to get out of here now. What happened?
um so the fight that became the last fight, um in short, was me telling him that I was ready to pursue. I had been working for the last like year at that point of building up an educational consulting business. I was ready to do something different outside of the classroom. Um, and so I wanted to kind of take the leap of the work that I had already done and set things up, to like, okay, let me try this. And he was all gung ho. It was like, okay, cool, do it. It sounds great. Until I said, I'm going to need some financial support around it for the next 6 to 9 months. Like, let me get up on my feet, with it. And, and then he got quiet and pensive. And then it was like, well, I don't want to talk about this right now. I'm like, okay. And the more I called myself stepping away, because he kept saying he didn't want to talk about it, And then all of a sudden he wanted to talk about it. But it wasn't a talk. It was a yell, and it was a scream, and it was, the kids aren't mine. And, you need to show me bank statements. And why do I need to do all of this? And, yeah, and so the conversation started upstairs. I moved downstairs. Everywhere we went, the kids went in the opposite direction. And I went in the living room. I sat down on the couch because I figured for me that was a safer bet than standing up in my face. And so as he's yelling, screaming, he yelled to me that the toilet paper he used to wipe his ass with was more useful than me. And
Oh, wow.
that stung, because there was a whole lot of other things he said. I don't even remember what they were. That one stood out for a number of reasons. A, because it was so vile. Like it was just, the visual of it was totally disgusting. And then to think back in that moment, 16 years, all the things that I have done for this to be it. And then he stepped out of the house for a moment. Our son came downstairs and he repeated it. And when he repeated it word for word, so that I would know he had heard it. And then he apologized. And he was like, Mom, that's not true. That's not who you are. And, those types of things. And that got me. That hurt me to my core. And then my daughters came down afterwards. And, my oldest one, she was like, why is he acting like this? He's a grown man. He shouldn't be doing that. And my son was like, don't call him that. Don't call him that. And she's like, what do you mean? And he says, you keep saying he's a grown man. Like, don't say that. And she was like, well, what would you call it? And he was like, he's an adult, but he's not a man. And, he had, yeah.
That's deep. That's a bit deep.
Yeah. And I was I'm listening to this and I'm like, whoa. He had brandished a knife on me. And so I had gone to the kitchen and got a number of knives. And my son was the one who ended up taking it away from me. And I'm like, you know what? This is crazy. Like, we keep doing this up and down. And the ups don't go up that high and the downs get lower than the one from before. It was enough. And the police had been called twice in that one day by him, on me to get me out of the house. He had tried to kick me down the stairs and all of this nonsense in one night because of what I said about wanting to kind of get my business off the ground. And the next morning after I spoke to the last officer who came to the house, and before that, he had made a threat to me as the first set of officers were escorting him out of the house. And I said to the officers, you all are, I was like, that was a threat. Like, you're not going to say anything. You're not going to, because he was like, you're marked. And I'm like, you all just going to let him say that? Like, and they're like, oh, you said some things. He said some things. Like, we'll just call it a wash. He's leaving. You all just need to calm down, whatever. And I said, you all aren't going to be satisfied until he comes out of this house in a body bag. And I
Oh,
said
wow.
it, Lorna, and I meant it. And that scared me because I meant it.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that there
Oh,
was
wow.
way too
Yes.
much to lose, to follow it. And that's no way to
Yeah, you have the
live.
children there. Yeah.
Hmm.
No.
It's no way
Mm-mm.
to live. And
Okay.
so after
Okay.
all of that, that next morning when things cleared, so to speak, or whatever, I was just like, I'm done. I called back home. I spoke to a friend of mine. I spoke to my mom, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm done. Hearing my mother crying over the phone, even though, she was being supportive, and it was too much. It was
Mm-hmm.
just too much. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting myself at risk. I'm putting my kids at risk. My family is upset, just from hearing it. And it was time to go. So that was on Saturday.
Yeah.
And by that following Thursday, we got on the road and left.
But you have to tell me about the great escape in the car. That you just got your license. Yeah,
Yep.
you have to tell the listeners about that great escape. Come on, man. Tell us about the
Listen,
great escape there.
listen, the great escape, right? I had
Yeah.
because it was New York, I didn't necessarily have to have a license, especially before I had the kids and all that type of stuff. And then of
Right.
course as I started having them and as they got older, everybody had different needs, so like I really needed a car, but I didn't have my license. And
Right.
so I finally got my license. I got my license on a Friday in October. It was on a Friday. And Saturday, we had another fight. And I ended up calling one of my friends, and she was like, "Okay, I'm going to meet you." I told her where I was. She pulls up in this new car. And once I got myself situated, she talked me off the ledge. I was like, "Where you get this car from?" This is really nice. She's like, "Listen,
All
I
right.
got a guy
Yes.
at the dealership. He's good." She's like, "Let me know when you're ready. I know you just got your license. Let me
Mhm.
know when you're ready." I said, "I'm ready." So she was like, "Okay, well, like, nah, let me know when you're ready." I'm like, "No, like, I'm ready right now." So she
Mhm.
puts
Mhm.
the guy on the phone. We go out to the dealership. I start initiating my paperwork. We had to leave, come back. She stayed with me. She stayed with the kids. We didn't leave till midnight. I had everything set up.
Mhm.
They were like, "Come back on Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock and pick up your car." And that's what I did. That is the same car
Mhm.
that I use when he stepped out of the house. I had been packing a little bit in plain sight. And when he left out, I knew I didn't have but so long because he was like, "I'm just going up the street or whatever." I'm like, "Okay." The kids thought we were going school shopping. I'm like, "Come on, let's go." I had loaded things up in the car. They didn't see me because there was a
Right.
door between the stairs that I was navigating and where they were sitting.
Right.
Um, Loaded up the car, got them in, went to the gas station to top off, and went to go get some money. So I thought, from the bank. And as we were parked in the parking lot, we get out, we're going to the bank, and I almost walked right into their dad, like he was in the car. And I'm like, "Oh my God, maybe he followed me. Maybe he knows, So now I'm like nervous and, I'm like telling the kids, "Get back in the car, get back in the car." And I sat there, I waited for him to leave. He left. I changed parking spots. And instead of going to the bank, I went to the store. I was like, "Let me get them some snacks. Let me get some drinks. I'll get some cash back after I pay for it." We out. And even
Right.
though I had just gotten my license, like that was in October, we left in August. And so I had been driving, but I never drove on the expressway. And so when I
Mhm.
went to make the turn to get on the freeway, all my kids were sitting in the back seat and they go, and I'm like, "Yeah."
He
Like,
said, "This don't look good. Let's put on that seatbelt. Make sure it's secure."
they were like, "You sure you made the right turn?" I'm like, yeah, I'm sure.
Imagine the poor face. Oh my God, poor children.
Lorna, you could have heard, oh, you could have
So,
heard a pin drop. I swear to God.
I
They,
know. I can just imagine.
they looked at me, and so I had to tell them, I said, do you guys trust me? And they were like, uh-huh. I said,
Yeah,
okay.
probably. Do we have an option? We're in a car with the four doors locked. Or the, let's wait. Better.
Hey, what choice do I have now? And my son is sitting behind me, and he's like, you good? What are we doing? And so I told him, I said, listen, we getting ready to go to grandma's house. And they're like, so we're going to the airport? I said, no, I'm driving. And they're like, yeah, but
Okay.
to the airport.
Let's start time.
They're like, we driving
Don't
to the
touch block.
airport. Because all they knew to visit my family was to go to the airport and you know, we would fly. And so I said, no, we taking a road trip. We driving. And so we made it to across the first state line. I pulled over. I was really nervous. My nerves were frayed. So I only drove for about 2 hours. And you know, when we got settled into the hotel, of course, we had a lot of conversations about what was happening and why, and as best as I could explain it. And you know, I wasn't in any rush. Everybody was like, listen, take your time, you know, especially you got 3 kids in the
Right.
car and you've never done like long driving before. Like, it's no rush. If you got to spend the night somewhere, spend the night, you know, just take your time. We're here. And so we left Thursday, and 510 miles later, I was at my mom's house Saturday afternoon. Uh, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it's funny when he and I started speaking back, his one of his first questions was, "How did you get there?" And I said, "I drove." And to this day, he doesn't believe it. He's like, you know, you had somebody come and get you. You had, and I'm like, no, I didn't. I drove. That's how much I needed to go.
You have to make a leap of faith. You know, you just have to
Mhm.
just, you know, just put God at the wheel.
Mhm.
Let Jesus take the wheel according to the saying. That Jesus take the wheel
Listen,
for you
and
and
that's
He
literally
take
what
you there.
happened. Because as I
Mm-hmm.
was driving, I don't like being with the big trucks and stuff. And there was a little bit of that. And anytime, because I don't like that close feeling. And so as I'm driving, my son would hear me in the back, and I was like, Jesus, 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 Jesus. And he goes, "You okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm okay." And he's like, "Then why are you calling on Jesus?" Like, so as we got closer, I had made this turn, and it was like a skidded turn, and you know, and my son goes, we can
Everybody went over to the other
yeah,
side.
you're right." And he's like, "We can stop again. You know, Mom, we can stay at another hotel." And I'm like, "We're too close. I'm only an hour away. I'm not stopping." And so as we
My
got in, the
God.
closer we got, the more I was like, you know, I was getting more anxious. And
Right.
and so as we're coming in, I didn't even realize, Lorna, I think for that last hour or so, I was driving, and my abdomen was so tight that when I finally pulled
Mm.
up and parked the car, I was sore when I released just
Oh,
breath.
wow.
And
Yes.
I called, you know, my
Wow.
family. I called some of my friends to let them know that we had made it in. And 2 of my girlfriends came
Mm-hmm.
over immediately. And I couldn't get out of the car. I was sitting there, I was
Mm.
crying, I was like all kind of emotions. My principal at the time,
Everything
the
came
woman who was
flooded like a flood.
everything. My former principal was on the phone with me. She was in Belize. She was no, not
Mm-hmm.
Belize, Aruba. She was in Aruba. She was on the
Mm.
phone with me. And she's like, you made it. It's okay. Like you did it. She's like, I'm so proud of you. Like you did it. You're there. You're safe. And when my friends
Right.
came, they were talking to her because I had just gotten to the point where I couldn't even talk anymore. And so they were like, we're here. She was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to hang up till I knew somebody else was with her. And they were like, okay, you got to get out the car. And I was just like, I can't. My kids had gotten out. They were playing stickball in front of the complex. And I literally could not. And they're like, no, you have to stand up. Like, you've
Right.
been sitting behind. She's
Mm-hmm.
like, you're tense. You've been really tense. You have to
Right.
stand up. And when I stood up,
Right.
that's when I realized how sore my abdomen was. And I
Mm.
just, fell apart for a moment. But yep, that's how we got here.
Wow. What a journey. What a journey. What a journey. Wow. That is such a sweet, bittersweet, you know.
Mhm.
But at least you had a supportive family and you had supportive friends that, that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, what have been some of the most rewarding aspect of starting fresh and building a new life? What have been some of the most rewarding things that have happened to you?
I know for a fact that the most rewarding things that have happened is that I've made, for the first time, I think, in my life, an alignment between
Mhm.
my physical health, my spiritual health, and my mental health. Um, and
Mhm.
so I I made a commitment every morning. I'm up by 4:30 to give thanks, for my gratitude, for my prayers, for my meditation.
Mhm.
Um, I journal, and I have a devotional that's biblically based, and I journal in there.
Mhm.
And I was having some health issues when I got here, and my mom gifted me a gym membership. And so I've been very diligent with that, to the point where
Mhm.
I was with three different doctors, and they all came to the conclusion that was from November to like March. And by the time we got to March, they were like, we don't need to see you anymore, except for your annual visits. And, all
Okay,
that I
that's
had
good.
gone through to get to that point was just, it was all such a blessing. And I knew there was divine alignment, um, in
Mhm.
making that decision, because, you start questioning yourself. Did I really do the right thing?
Yes.
Should I have stayed
Mhm.
in state, not necessarily in the relationship and in that same home, but should I not have moved states, and just stay because, my kids are used to being there? Was this too much, of an uproot? Um, when I took them to school for the first day, I felt like I was really cool, and I went in and I got them situated, and all these things. And when I was looking for a school, I literally sat in front of my laptop, and some friends of mine had given me some recommended schools. And before I started my research and whatever, I sat here, Lorna, and I prayed. And I prayed over all three of my kids and gave out individually everything that I knew
Um.
they needed, because they had never gone to school together. And I found one
Mm.
school that supported every single thing that I'd asked for. And their open house for new
Amen.
families and parents was that evening. And I contacted them, and the principal, when I told them, a little bit about why we were here, they asked me to come the following day, because the principal was like, you know what? I don't want you to come with the groups of everybody else that's coming. You have a special case. We need to make sure
Exactly.
we really understand it. We want you to come by yourself with your kids. And so by the
Okay,
time I
that's
had gone
beautiful.
through all of that, and even they have been extremely supportive, it's been family. And so even with all of that, drop them off at school, and they're like, Mom, we got this, you go, we got them, and I pulled back into the parking lot, and I cried for half an hour. And again, it was just one of those overwhelms of emotion. It was a number of things, but it also, for the first time, felt permanent, you know. Um, and so having moved from that feeling to, okay, we're better, we're making it, a day at a time. We have our ups, we have our downs, but we have more ups than downs. And we definitely have a lot of peace and peace of mind. And that is something that I had not realized that I was living without for a long time.
Yeah, beautiful. A lot of people don't realize, okay, how much money you have. Your peace of mind is very important.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
know people who have left very lucrative jobs because there was no peace there. There was
Mm-hmm.
always, animosity and things going on,
Mm-hmm.
and you just walk away
Mm-hmm.
to a lower paying job, but the peace is there.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you. Peace is very important because we can't function. So, what advice would you give persons who are in a similar position that you were in? What could you have done different if you were to speak to your old self now? What would you tell your old self to do based on your experience now? So it's a twofold question. What would you tell yourself, and what would you tell other people in the situation?
Um, I think I would tell my old self the same thing that I would say to anyone else at this point, and that is,
Mhm.
you can pray, you can ask, you can do all those things, but you got to move. There have to be
Action.
acts that go along with the
Action.
faith. And so, and I
Mhm.
know for me, sometimes that would sound, even though I know it's biblically based and what have you, people would say it so much, it would sound cliche to me. But I'm
Mhm.
learning that you have to move. You have to put action behind it. You can say you're tired
Exactly.
until the cows come home, and you can mean it and be tired. But what are you tired of? And when do you get tired of being tired? Because as long as you're willing to stick it out, you're not as tired as you think, you know. And it's not all on somebody else. I definitely taught him how to treat me. Um, and I
You
allowed
allowed him. You
for
allowed him.
things to
You.
happen.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I allowed it.
Mhm.
And so, I have to be willing to
Yeah.
look into the mirror for myself too. Um, and that's why I said, I'm in therapy. There is nothing wrong with that. And I think in our community, sometimes that's shunned. I think it's getting better now for
Yeah.
people to
I
be
can relate
more
to that.
aware. Uh-huh.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
getting
Definitely.
better,
Yeah.
but you still have
Especially the
some.
Caribbean people. Caribbean
Listen,
people. Mhm.
and I lived in what they called it, little Trinidad, when I was in Brooklyn. So yeah, but
Yeah.
it's a real thing. It's not the same as talking to your friends or venting to your family or what have you. It's not. Um, and so whatever types of supports that you can get it. But at the end of the day, nothing's going to change until you move. You got to move. You
Mhm.
got to
Mhm.
make action. You got
Yes.
to take the steps to take the action, whatever the it is. You have to do it
Mhm.
in order for things to start to change. That's it.
There's a proverb that says, no, there's a saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. You have
Yep.
to make that step.
Yep.
You have to make that
Absolutely.
step. That's so
Absolutely.
true. So I want to know, with all this that's going on. What are, can you share some of your memorable moments of triumph and achievement that stand out to you since you've gone on your own and embracing different opportunities? Is there anything that stands out to you that you've been doing, or
I think there are two things that stand out to me the most, maybe three. One is understanding or starting to gain a better understanding of some of the things that were happening with me within that relationship and working to do better with my kids.
Mhm.
And I'm really proud of that, because cycles have to be broken. Curses have to be broken.
Generational curses?
And so
Mhm.
I'm not, it doesn't make sense for us to have had the experience just to turn around and watch it happen within the next 10, 15, 20 years on the next generation. I
Yeah.
bind all,
That's,
no,
mhm.
that's no. And the devil is a liar on that over my kids. And that's all
Mhm.
there is on that. And so that's one thing. The other is having truly begun to build like a spiritual walk with God. Um, I've always been a believer, went to church with my grandmother, all these things, but to actually take the time to be intentional, to give thanks, to know that when I speak to God, that there is action behind it and that I see the manifestations of those prayers come to fruition. I
That's
didn't
that's
know
that's
what was
awesome.
going to happen when we got here. My son needed a doctor within a month of being here. And I knew that from leaving. There was blood work that he had to have done. I had no idea how I was
Mhm.
going to get this done. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get insurance. I don't know none of this. I sat down, I prayed, and the Lord told me, or my spirit said, sit down and ask for help. And
Mhm.
there are classmates of mine from high school who, Facebook, social media, you're able to kind of keep in contact with people or whatever.
Right.
But it
Right.
was put your pride to the side. And there was a list of women who I've been in contact with, some that I was like, some who are really, really close to me, most who were maybe more acquaintances than friends. But I knew
Mhm.
who did what. I knew some of them were in education. I knew some of them were in medicine. I knew some of them were in social work. And I put those names together and I sent out one messenger. And I said, this is my
Mhm.
situation. I need help. I got bags of clothes from
Mhm.
those women. One of them is my kid's doctor. She was like, I'm not supposed to
Okay.
take any more clients. She took all three of my kids. So I didn't have to worry about how he was going to get the medical work done
Right.
that he needed done. When he was
Yeah.
getting work done on his mouth, I was like, I don't know where to go to finish the work being done. When I contacted
Mhm.
where he was in New York, and I had a beautiful relationship with the doctors there, and they were like, listen, we're not going to charge you for everything. We're only going to bill for the services done, and we're not going to charge for everything. So I had
Mhm.
like a $12,000 bill in New York that was cut down to like $2,000 for my son.
Who could
And
it
I
be?
still had to find
What
somewhere
God?
here, you know. And it was
Mhm.
just, I know that there was divine intervention because I didn't know how
Mhm.
to do it. You know, my therapy out of that list that I put together, social worker, here, call this number.
Mhm.
Called the number, didn't get
Mhm.
through for months, left messages. She's like, keep pushing, keep pushing, kept pushing, got therapy. It don't cost me a dime. It doesn't cost me a
Mhm.
dime. So it's just all of these things the footsteps, you know, fall into place. And so I know that building that faith walk is real. It's really real. And so that's another thing
And plus your
that I've done. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
and plus your journey, the journey that what you've gone through. This is very important for other women to hear your story. So that is another thing that God has given you. He's given you that mouthpiece. He's giving you that
Mhm.
platform. He's giving you
Mhm.
an opportunity to tell other women you don't have to stay there.
Mhm.
We don't
Mhm.
have to stay there.
Mhm.
You don't have to stay
It's
there.
it's a
So you
choice
have
at
that,
the end of
you
the
know,
day.
you have
You
that.
may not think it is. You may feel that you're victim to. We're not. You're not victims. What they say, you're not a victim, you're a victor. But you gotta move. You gotta move. You gotta take that first step, no matter what the it is. It can be a friend, it can be a domestic violence shelter, it can be whatever the it needs to be. But what's not an
Right.
option is just losing you and losing,
Staying yourself, losing yourself.
losing yourself. Not an option. Not an option.
All right. So, are there any specific goals or aspirations you have for yourself moving forward in this new, and God anointed path that God has put you on? Have you have any specific goals and aspirations that you like to share with us?
I mean, there's a lot that's going on. I'm back putting my business back together because I honestly had to step away from it for a little
Mhm.
bit. I just didn't have a mental capacity for it. And so I'm pivoting a little bit with it, but I'm working on setting up my online coaching business. In the meantime,
There
still
you
getting
go.
my footing back into education where I am now. And so I've been offered a position at my kids' school. And I'm waiting to hear
Thank
back
you,
from
Jesus.
another
Thank you,
position
Lord.
with the school district here. Um, and so I have those in alignment. Like I said, my physical health is getting better. And so I make sure that that is a priority for me,
Mhm.
for getting my physical health in order. I'm about 20 pounds lighter than I was when I got here. I'm a lot stronger and I'm building a lot of muscle. And so continuing to do
Mhm.
those things. And taking some time for myself. I'm learning how to invest. So
Mhm.
the money that I do have, I've been learning how to invest it and to make it grow so that I can develop, passive income and pass these things on to
Right.
my kids and that knowledge,
Absolutely.
so that it's not just with me. Um, so those are some of the things. And then just taking time with my family. I haven't lived with them in 30 years. We
Mhm.
celebrated Mother's Day with my mom, my brothers and I, and we realized, and I said to them, this is the first time we have sat at a table with our mom for Mother's Day all together in one place in 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And so mhm, first time. And my mom all day, she was just like, for my mom to be silent amongst us was
Mhm.
saying a lot. And she was just like,
Overjoyed. She was
uh-huh. She was just
overjoyed.
like, I
Yes.
don't have any words. And my youngest brother, he was like, no, we were together, a few years prior to that. And so he was describing the situation, and we were all
Right.
like, no, I wasn't here for that. I said, I remember
Yeah.
hearing about it, but I wasn't here. And yeah, so when I got here, and I told him, I said, I can prove it to you. He's 34. I said, the last birthday I spent with you, you were 4 years old.
Oh my
So,
goodness. So
mhm,
this is awesome. So the, 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 you know I'm sure you can look ahead with excitement about the other possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Buying a home, getting a
Yep.
business, all
Yep.
of this is all ahead of you.
Yep.
You have, you have plans. You can plan.
Yeah.
You
My
can plan
brother
now and
and
put your
I
plans
already
into
sat
action.
down. My younger brother, he's a mortgage broker. So we already sat down and discussed. I said, listen, within the next year or two, this is
Mhm.
what I need. So he pulled up my credit
Exactly.
report and was like, all right, this is what you got to do, blah, blah, blah. Another high school friend of mine, she's a realtor, got that on lock, So,
Yes. 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 Yes.
yeah, so it's
Yes.
like I said, it's been a journey. It's still a journey because that's just what life is. And some days are better than others, but overall, I have to always give thanks because like I said, when I start going through what has happened and how it's happened, and there's no way that I could have planned it.
Divine
Absolutely none.
intervention. Divine
Absolutely none.
intervention. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to ask you to make one promise to me.
Yes.
Don't let go of the hand. Don't let go of the hands that helping you. Don't let go. Remember to, sometimes when we see our way out and we can do all the things that we wanted and God give us all the things that we don't remember and we
Mm-hmm.
start slacking off. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
asking you,
Mm-hmm.
promise me, you
Yep.
continue holding on because He has a plan for you. This is nothing
Yep.
compared to what He has for you. You're gonna see it, and you're gonna remember I
Absolutely.
told you so.
Absolutely, Lorna.
so,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so So thank you so much for your willingness to share your journey and
Thank
inspire
you.
others in similar situations. As I said before, Modern Titus to Women Unplugged podcast. We are fearless and we dive into untold stories and unspoken struggles. Yes, this is my guest, Kissonda Williams. I thank you